afternoon. I'd like to call to order the Board of Supervisors regular meeting for June 6th. If everyone will please rise for the pledge of allegiance and another time. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moment of silence. Thank you. If we have a motion to adopt the agenda.
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the agenda as presented and posted to Board Docs for the public's review.
For a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Going in now into presentations, and we have Dr. Hensley here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. We did it. Our CPS closed out the year on a high note with our in-person indoor graduation ceremony on May 27th. Feedback from graduation has been extremely positive, and we would like to extend a special thanks to those of you who were able to attend in person or watch online. We really appreciate that. It means so much that you were able to celebrate this joyous occasion with us. Our CPS wrapped up the year with many of the celebrations and events we were unable to hold last spring in a traditional format, including a beautiful senior prom, senior banquet, baccalaureate, senior picnic, our CES field day, award ceremonies, and of course, culminating with our graduation ceremonies for our preschoolers, kindergartners, 7th graders, and seniors. We were able to also honor our retirees from the system during our celebrations. Retiring this year from our CPS were Shelly Schenkel, after 23 years of service, Rhonda Jenkins, after 24 years of service, and Jeff Scroggins, after 18 years of service. These amazing individuals have certainly left quite a legacy at our CPS and will be sorely missed. Currently, summer school is underway and has expanded in order to provide extended instruction throughout the entire summer. June will focus on academic support and remediation, while July will focus more on enrichment and social-emotional well-being. In July, our CES students will head to Graves Mountain to participate in hands-on learning activities, team building, creativity, and financial literacy. This program is sure to be a huge success. Additionally, our CPS, in partnership with RAPC, is launching a new program this summer called the Pathways Academy. Just started today, actually. Juniors and seniors applied to participate in this program where they will enhance workplace readiness soft skills as well as take a deep dive into the workforce through job shadowing, experiences, interviews, and internships. This program will build in many life skills activities as well, such as basic car maintenance, first aid, etiquette, healthy habits, self-defense, and financial literacy. Also happening this summer, the Pop Power Produce Bucks program, Pop Bucks, returns, offering large bags of produce and protein and breads fresh from our local farmers through the Rappahannock County Farmers Market. All enrolled RCPS students are eligible to receive one bag of produce over the summer. This program is a collaboration between Commit to Be Fit, the Rapp Farmers Market, and the PATH Foundation, and it has been hugely successful. To sign up to receive your free Farmers Market bag, if you have an enrolled RCPS student, sign up at rapc2bf.com/popbucks. Bags can be picked up every Saturday at the Rapp Farmers Market. Athletic awards were held last month as well, honoring the many great athletes we saw succeed this year, including Grant Lillard and Miranda Jenkins, who were honored as RCPS Male and Female Athletes of the Year. Cammie Brown received the Sportsmanship Award. Chris Shanks was awarded the Unsung Hero Award. Luke Ellis received the Neil Burke Memorial Award, and Jeff Atkins was named Impact Coach of the Year. Our athletics teams worked very hard this season, with our baseball team becoming the Region 1B champions after an 11-0 shutout against Buffalo Gap last week. I hope you'll all come out tomorrow night at home as our baseball team plays Lancaster in the state quarterfinal matchup at 6 p.m. Track and field performed very well also, with Luke Ellis becoming the Region 1 beat champion in the 1600 meter and the 3200 meter, and Savannah Loving advancing to states in discus and high jump, and both Brian Campbell and Clint Sneed advancing to states for discus. The track athletes competed hard in the state tournament just this past weekend, and Luke Ellis was named All-State in the 1600 and 3200. And Savannah Loving placed 10th in the high jump and 13th in discus. Congratulations to our athletes. Last week, our CPS participated in an emergency response tabletop exercise organized by Emergency Services Coordinator Sean Polster and facilitated by the Virginia Department of Emergency Management. This exercise had been discussed for several years at our RCPS crisis management team meetings, and this particular exercise had been slated for June 2nd since February. But the timing could not have been more relevant after the horrific incidents in Uvalde just prior to the training. This exercise was very beneficial as a way to test our emergency response procedures in coordination with other first responding agencies, such as the Sheriff's Office, Virginia State Police, Fire and Rescue, VDOT, and Dispatch, to ensure that our plans match the capabilities and procedures of each of the responding agencies, as well as expose any vulnerabilities in our crisis plan. Our CPS is committed to the school security and safety of our students, and we thank all the agencies involved in helping us continuously improve our procedures to ensure safety remains a top priority. Finally, the Virginia General Assembly has pushed forward a compromise amendment to the Governor's Office for final approval. The budget makes historic investments in education, and the budget our CPS adopted as the school board budget is pretty much on point for what is projected as revenues. Good thing, many major changes. And we expect the governor to sign off on that hopefully very soon. As always, we appreciate all you do for our students and families. We could not have had such a successful year without that support. So thank you so much. Do you have any questions for me?
Congratulations on the successful graduation. I know Mr. Carney and I really enjoyed being there, and it was really inspiring. And your valedictorian and salutatorian were really impressive young women, and I believe, if I remember correctly, one is headed to the University of Arizona, and then Miranda Jenkins to Virginia Wesleyan, and I think BYU also for Ava Geno, so that's great. It was really nice to see students going on several different paths, and very nice mix and balance in that regard, and it sounds like you got a busy summer of both sports activities and continuing education programs, so congratulations on not letting school end probably when you're looking for a break. So really all the momentum is really impressive. Thanks for your leadership.
I appreciate that, thank you.
I would just like to add that too. Thank you so much for the invitation to come, and congratulations to all the seniors. It was truly an amazing celebration, and I could tell that everybody was really excited to be back and doing it in person.
Yes.
So thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
Sorry, I missed the festivities, but the game, do we need to buy tickets or is it just show up?
Yes, you can get tickets at the gate, but also online.
Said on Facebook, you can only do it online.
Oh, that's okay. I apologize. Only online.
Okay.
Usually
But
we have.
it'll be on Facebook Live tomorrow.
And then I did want to circle back on Schoolhouse Road traffic issues, so I wonder if your team this summer, maybe we could meet briefly. I went and looked, and I don't think, unless I'm missing it, I don't think that additional loop was added in the back parking lot that we talked about. I could be wrong.
On top of the loop, okay.
Yeah,
That's fine, you can go back. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so maybe have Mr. Tucker or someone get in touch with me, and then we can figure out what to do while there's no traffic so that we don't have this happening another fall.
Sure.
Yeah,
That's fine.
great, thanks.
I just wanted to talk a little bit about school safety, which I appreciate you're talking about the recent exercises in your report this month, but I had a couple of parents reach out to me about safety at the schools, and I know that recently is sort of in the forefront of a lot of folks' mind. And I'm sure that you can document even better than I can, but I know in recent years we have funded improvements to the school so that there's atriums before entry into the school, and your locked door policies, and our continued funding of a school resource officer. And please just know that if there's anything that I can do to help you as a member of this board, in regards to school safety, please, I hope and know that you will always bring that to us.
Yes, thank you so much, definitely. We have made some major improvements with security, and we've taken part in some voluntary audits as well, just to continually test those procedures. We can never assume that they're all perfect and there aren't vulnerabilities, so we need to know that. So we really appreciate your support on that.
The other item that I know we discussed during budget season, but we all sort of decided that it wasn't a great time to talk to folks in Richmond, because everyone seemed to be very busy, is looping back to LCI discussions with our representatives in Richmond to see if there's any way to make headway, whether how it's computed or if there's special allowances that we can pursue for rural counties. And hopefully now that the budget's clearing, we can start to work on that again.
Absolutely, especially when the JWARC study comes out this December. It'll be a great time to see, because Rappahannock was at the table, and they asked to see our research through the SIFT program and the reports and that. So once that comes out, we can see where they're heading to. That will give us a lot more credibility, I think, with going to our legislators and showing the impact that that's had. So thank you very much, yes.
Well, I just think in terms of if we could put together small groups, maybe a member of this body, a member of the school board, a member of the special committee that worked on the LCI, and maybe yourself to go down and start talking to folks in Richmond, putting our faces in the door, that would be great.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, moving into public comment. If anyone wishes to speak, please be recognized, and then when you come up to the mic, give us your name and your district, and we'll start in the courtroom and go. We do have several people online. Anybody here wishing to speak during public comment?
Will there be a public comment period at any other point?
Not until this evening.
Hi, I'm Mary Catherine Ishii from Piedmont District, and I just wanted to use this opportunity to express my appreciation to Christine Smith and to this board for having appointed me to the commission, the Planning Commission, for the past 3 years. It's given me a great opportunity to learn more about our land use processes and hopefully to be of some service to the community. I see that there are several applications for the position currently, which I think is fantastic. It's great to see the community interested in and energized about our land use, which is really vital to our way of life here in the county. I think that's awesome. I would like, if I could, to take the opportunity to share some of my impressions from the past 3 years on the Planning Commission. First of all, I want to emphasize the importance of the Planning Commission. I've heard some say, even some Planning Commission members occasionally, that the Planning Commission isn't all that important in this county and that deciding bodies don't even consider some of our recommendations. First of all, I actually don't think that's correct. I think they do consider and take them seriously. But if there is any truth to it, then something is drastically wrong. The Planning Commission should be, and in most counties is, the expert body on the critical issues of land use. When the Planning Commission sends recommendations up to the board of the BZA, those bodies should be able to rely fully on the recommendations of the Planning Commission as having considered and properly applied the law, land use policy, and the goals of our comprehensive plan. The deciding body can then determine any other criteria to consider in their legislative discretion without fear that important land use considerations have been somehow missed. We're a small county with a small staff. However, we should not be penny wise and pound foolish by not having a qualified legal counsel provided and present at each and every meeting where decisions are being made by the Planning Commission. Without this, we are more likely to produce poorly informed decisions, which will be difficult to defend if challenged in court. I truly appreciate the kind words that some have shared with me about having put in the necessary work these past 3 years to review applications and study the ordinance and policy issues raised. I trust that this is the minimum that every commissioner does, or should do certainly, and hope that whomever you decide to appoint to this position will take that responsibility very seriously, along with all who agree to serve on this very important body. We are at a critical juncture in this county. We're still feeling the effects of major staffing changes in recent years, And at the same time, we're facing substantially increased development pressures that could deeply affect the quality of life in this community. We are looking at the possibility of updating key elements of our land use and subdivision ordinances. These are sensitive issues under any circumstances, but I urge us to consider that our ordinance is arguably one of the strongest in Virginia in terms of land use protections. While key tweaks and updates to the ordinance are certainly in order, we should not open it up too broadly or thereby risk the likelihood of negotiating down from our already very strong position. As I've said before, to the surprise of some, I don't consider us a no-growth county. Growth should mean increasing and advancing the assets that make a community more livable and sustainable and add to our quality of life. In many communities, they approach that by building more structures, be it housing or commercial or industrial development. But we in Rappahannock are stewards of resources that are unique and irreplaceable. Our proximity to a national park gives us an ecosystem and viewshed that nobody else has or ever will have. As I've said before, I've had people in other communities when I've talked to on planning commission say, boy, we wish we had the viewshed that you guys had, because then we could do all kinds of preservation measures too, but we don't have that. We in Rappahannock are stewards of resources that are unique and irreplaceable. Yes, I said that. There are many places where the highest and best use of the land is intense residential, commercial, or industrial development, but that place is not Rappahannock. If I'm asked to continue to serve on the Planning Commission, I will be honored to do so. However, if you choose a different approach, I hope you will strongly consider some of the other applications, particularly that of Lisa Jones. I have known Lisa for some time. Her family has farmed the Johnson property for generations, and Lisa is continuing that tradition. Her grandfather wrote a history of Rappahannock. Lisa was raised in Rappahannock, and she raised her son here. She has an undergraduate degree from Duke and a master's degree, I believe, in chemistry. She's smart, focused, and understands well the economic, cultural, and land use issues of this county. She would be a strong asset on the Planning Commission, although, as I said, I would be very honored to serve again. I'd also just like to say in closing that today is June 6th, and almost 80 years ago today, my father was landing with the first wave of troops on the beaches of Normandy. He was an intelligence officer and had been a track star in college, and it was his job to run back and forth along the beach delivering news. Miraculously, he didn't sustain any significant physical injuries, but the emotional memories of those horrors stayed with him until the day he died. I haven't ever been placed in battle, although I admit sometimes on the Planning Commission it felt somewhat vaguely similar to that, but maybe not quite the same. But I have been placed in Rappahannock, and I suppose that the least I can do is to try to the best of my ability to be decent to my fellow man and fellow creatures, and to help steward the magnificent resources that the good Lord has given to us. Again, I thank you all for having given me the opportunity to serve on the Planning Commission, and I thank you all for the service that you provide to this county, which I think, again, as I've said before, is often greatly underestimated. So thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I'll just like to give you guys the opportunity to ask me a question. I did put in an application today for the Planning Commission because I'd like to just be involved with the county going forward. I want you to know that I did really spend some real time. I've read the Berkeley report. I have addressed this group before, and I always refer to the Code of Virginia. I understand the role and responsibility of the Planning Commission, and I also think that we all say it's important to maintain our rural character. It's important to maintain our rural character, and I am actively involved with farming. And I don't know how much everyone really realizes that if you do not have some of these large fields that are productive, that is what gives you your views. When I get frustrated with this county, sometimes I think I'm just going to plant trees all along my roadways, and you guys won't see anything from the road. And it's real. It's a real gift. You have to have the mix of forest and open area. And I also want to say, frankly, I have calluses on my hands. I mean, I do real work and understand the employment opportunities also that are in the county right now, and am very frightened of the developmental pressure. Like I said, when I read the Berkeley report, I went and looked up, what does it mean to vacation a plat? Okay, that is not language that I normally use in my everyday life, okay? But I looked it up, and I think that where there's always only pressure to upzone, 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 we never downzone. And you guys have seen this from some of the things that were mentioned in the Berkeley report. I've specifically been in front of this body and said, right, what about cluster housing? I've specifically been in front of this body and said the Dark Skies Initiative, that needs to be tied down so that anytime someone comes in for a tourist house, we require the Dark Skies Initiative. I've written letters to this specific body to say, if we're going to call a driving range agricultural use property for agricultural use, here's how agricultural use is defined in the Code of Virginia, and this is how recreational use is defined in the Code of Virginia, and if we need to make a separate category, let's do it right and not grandfather some stuff in. I'm not saying I'm anti it, I'm just saying let's think about it and let's do it right. So, do you guys have any questions for me?
Thank you.
Okay.
And if you just, for the recording
Record,
for
it's
the
Lisa
record,
Jones.
your name.
My name is Lisa Jones. I'm in the Piedmont District.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I do just want to clarify a point of order too, that is historically part of public comment, is that we typically don't treat it as a question and answer period. We don't ask questions. Briefly, we do answer questions. So that's unfortunate, but that is the structure that we generally adhere to during these meetings.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Sally Haynes with Piedmont District. It's good to see so many people willing to represent Piedmont on the Planning Commission. It's an important position, as you all know. The current commissioner, M.K. Ishii, has a law degree and has experience on the commission. During her first term, she also applied herself to completing the Certified Planning Commissioner's course. I wonder how many commissioners have done that. I don't know if that's required or voluntary. She's known to be thorough and impartial, and there is no one, and I do mean no one, more dedicated to keeping Rappahannock the unique rural county that it is. I support her reappointment. I think that change for the sake of change would be foolish, or change because you may not like her independence. I think it's good to have an independent voice. The commission is currently involved in reviewing and revising all the zoning ordinances, and I think that's the time for steady as it goes. I don't think you could do better than to reappoint MK, but I also think that it's great that Lisa Jones and Mr. Sisk are willing to serve. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Not seeing anyone in the courtroom. Going to Zoom. Anyone wishing to speak, please raise your Zoom hand and we'll unmute you. Not seeing any Zoom hands.
Is Jeff Henry our new representative from Rappahannock Electorate?
I've not been given a name that I'm aware of, but I do see Jeff Henry, Rappahannock Electric, joining us.
Would you like to unmute and introduce yourself, Jeff Henry?
Good guy.
Maybe he's
Hey, sorry about that. I was having trouble unmuting myself.
There you go.
I'm the Director of Member Services and Community Engagement for the Culpeper office at Rappahannock Electric Cooperative. First time joining the Board of Supervisors meeting for Rappahannock, but I'm really excited to hopefully get to know everybody and answer any questions that come up regarding REC.
Thank you.
Did you have anything, Mr. Whitson?
No.
You're good. Okay.
I think everybody would agree that you have very large shoes to fill here in our eyes. relative to your most recent representation.
All right. We're going to go ahead and close public comment. And we'll move into approval of the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I'd like to pull out item 5, which is letter of support for VACO Achievement Award. I thought it'd be useful to provide a little background, and if we choose to approve signing that letter today, we'll need to make just a few adjustments, so we can't adopt it in its current form.
Okay. Anything else on the consent agenda?
So I was going to ask the same thing, so we could have some information about it.
Sure.
Entertain a motion to approve the rest of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Mr. Whitson.
Sure, Madam Chair, I'm happy to give some background. Time flies, so I don't even have the month correct in my own mind, but Ms. Donahue and I arranged for members of the Family Futures Board, including Ms. Yeoman, who's here today, to meet with a representative from the Virginia Association of Counties in the context of the Virginia Association of Counties Annual Achievement Awards. And we thought that the Family Futures program, which I think we're all now quite aware of, and I think we all recognize has been a great success, is worthy of broader recognition outside the county, and to the extent that maybe that the program could be something that other counties could learn about and possibly mimic in some form. I think it would be a great contribution from our community to other communities in the Commonwealth with similar interests in educating young people and financial management practices and life lessons related to personal finance. So to that end, Ms. Yeoman has been leading the charge on behalf of the Family Futures Board to craft an application to submit to VACO. And the interesting thing is that the Achievement Awards really are, or the Achievement Award application should originate with a government. And so I drafted a letter with your approval from our chair in support of the application from Family Futures, and it's now been pointed out to me that the letter really needs to be a cover letter for the application itself, so it'll require some minor tweaks. So that's the one practical reason why we need to talk about it and vote on it separately. Ms. Yeoman did send me some really great facts about the program that are updated as of today, and if I misspeak, you let me know. But so far, 190 of these custodial personal savings accounts have been opened. There are 3 cohorts, meaning 3 groups of students who have had their custodial accounts funded. And the cumulative balance, which is really incredible, through June is over $51,000. And it's really been an incredible program. And as board members, including Dr. Massey, point out, it's a reverse amortization schedule, meaning that more and more money will be required. So we do think, or I think, and Ms. Donahue agrees, that the more we can do to help Family Futures get recognition of what they're doing, hopefully the more people out there might be inclined to support their program and other communities as well. So with that, there is a draft letter for everyone to review, and as noted, it has to be tweaked a little bit so that it's a cover letter for the application as opposed to a letter of support.
And I know when we heard from Family Futures at that meeting, I think it was last fall, there was a program at one point that VACO allows different innovative programs from counties to come and make presentations at their annual meeting. Mm-hmm. Would this qualify them to do that?
Yeah, and because we're so confident that they're going to get an award,
that's great.
that not only would they be able to possibly participate in the annual VACO meeting, but maybe even be recognized. So we're pushing hard in this regard.
That's great.
VACO uses this as an opportunity to let the counties throughout the state see what other counties are doing that may be duplicatable. And I think this is one that I think a lot of eyes will be on this program.
So, I'll make the motion that we draft a cover letter to include with the submission.
Great, and again, it has been drafted, and I think we just need to authorize the chair to modify it slightly, to turn it into a chair or staff to modify it slightly and then sign it. Thank you. I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
And, and good luck.
Yes. All right, moving into appointments.
Yes, we still have one vacancy on your Agricultural and Forestal District Advisory Committee. Prerequisite to be a member is to be a landowner in the county, so there will be a meeting coming up in a couple months for that, and you'll have, I believe, a public hearing at your August meeting. We already went through the advertisement cycle, but we failed to get a quorum at this Agricultural and Forestal District Advisory Committee, so we're doing that again. But I have no applications at this time.
How many are currently on it?
Around 7, I think.
All right. Recreational Authority.
There are 3 appointment terms that are coming to an end on June 30th, 2022. That for Robert Yowell, Miriam Bonnie Beers, and then Mr. Whitson, who was appointed as a citizen to fill a vacant spot. I have received applications from Ms. Beers and Ms. Glimbowski as two citizens who are interested to sit on that authority board. Mr. Yowell has declined reappointment.
And so the appointees would, their terms would go into effect on July 1 for 4 years, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, I'll put forward a motion that we adopt the resolution provided in our packet, appointing Ms. Stacy Glimbowski and Ms. Bonnie Beers to the Rappahannock County Recreational Facilities Authority Board for a term beginning July 1, 2022 and ending June 30, 2026.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just want to say Ms. Gomblowski began attending meetings when I was still part of the RCRFA, and I think she'll be a great voice on there. I know she plays tennis, and that's a heavily used area of the park, and I think she'll be a great addition to representing those folks and making sure we take care of that asset in addition to other things I'm sure she'll bring to the table. And Bonnie Beers is very involved in the native plants programs at the park and really adds a wonderful dimension to that authority. So I enthusiastically support both of their appointments.
Yeah, I should mention Ms. Glimbowski was helping at the fodder stack finish line. And as Ms. Smith said, she's an active tennis player. I saw her there the other day when we were stocking fish. She was playing tennis. And I just want to take a moment to thank Bonnie Beers for her service. She pulled together the free family fishing day, which was this past Saturday, and she did a really nice job with that. And the volunteers on that board really work hard and do a lot. So, yeah, I second Ms. Smith's enthusiasm for both appointees.
And we should thank Mr. Yowell for his
Definitely.
and efforts.
Absolutely.
As chair.
I'd like to thank Mr. Robert Yowell for his service and for his leadership, and I wish him the best of luck moving forward.
Yeah,
He'll be missed.
the most recent year that I was on there was a very tough year to be on. You would never think the RCRFA would be
It is.
the most challenging body to be on sometimes, but it was, to be sure, a very challenging year.
Yeah.
And his leadership was very steady and very even-handed.
Agree.
And cooler heads prevailed, which is, it's always a good thing. So now we need one real go-getter to fill the other position.
We'll keep looking.
All right, we have a motion and a second. It's a roll call vote. Mr. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Whitson?
Aye.
Mr. Carney?
Aye.
And I also.
Are there any districts that aren't represented on there now currently at all?
I can analyze that.
I think we've got everybody.
For your next meeting, but I think you do.
We'll find someone.
All right, Planning Commission.
Madam Chair, members of the board, if we could postpone the appointment of the Jackson District seat till July, I'd appreciate it. I was awaiting at least one other applicant, but didn't appear that they had time to get it in.
Okay, do we need to take any action in that regard, or we just move on? Okay.
Well, you have Piedmont.
Right, I mean,
Yeah.
move on from Jackson.
Yep.
I'd like to go ahead and make the Piedmont appointment this month if it suits the rest of the board. There's a very distinct possibility that I won't be here in person next month, and I think it's kind of like my wedding day. You got to do it in front of God and everybody. So, so I would like to go ahead and make that appointment today. And I'm so sorry that Miss Ishii is not here. I would like to just thank her for her thoughtful service on the Planning Commission over the last few years. There have been a lot of challenging materials that have come through the commission, including the cell, seems like a long time ago now, the cell tower applications that this board put through in early 2020, the comprehensive plan work, and most recently the Taylor application last year. Those are all very involved processes, and it's a challenge to always listen to all sides of a story and to be fair and to have everyone feel heard, and that's a big part of the job at the end of the day. And I do appreciate Ms. Ishii's work in that regard and everything she has brought to the table very thoughtfully. I do think it's very unfortunate that we just received Ms. Jones' application this morning. I would have loved to talk to her further about the position, but I do feel like I need to make the appointment today, and so I need to make the appointment based on the information that I have now. I can't make it based on future information. And I had talked to Mr. Sisk. I'll say that I believe Mr. Sisk brings a different and needed dimension to the Planning Commission. As Ms. Jones alluded, I think he'll bring an eye for agriculture and a perspective from that community on the Planning Commission, and I would appreciate that very much because it is such a centerpiece of our comprehensive plan. And also, the other thing that has been a key force in much of our action this past year as a board has been public safety. And we see that with the CenturyLink issues we've had throughout the county, the event challenges that we are still working through at the Planning Commission level, and several other things that are on the table for the Planning Commission. And so I think that's been missing on the Planning Commission since Chairman Settle was a member of that body. And of course, he brought a keen eye for public safety forward as well.
You had a couple of years in there.
Just a few. He spoke with a lot of great experience there. And I know one thing, both Mr. Sisk and Ms. Jones and several members of this body, including myself, truly and acutely feel is the importance of multiple generations living together in the county and supporting each other and figuring out a way for multiple generations to continue to be able to live on the land in Rappahannock County. And there's a lot of work to be done there. We've discussed that before as a body and sent that work down to the Planning Commission. And I believe there's a lot of urgency there too. On that note, I would just put forward the name of Thomas Sisk for appointment to the Planning Commission to represent the Piedmont District.
And what's the required action here? Is it a resolution?
So it's just a motion, and this would be for a term ending July 2nd, 2026.
Well then, I'll include that.
And it'll become effective I guess on July 2nd, 2022.
Okay, to become effective July 22nd,
July
2022.
2nd, 2022.
For the duration of July 2nd, 2026.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll make a second.
We have a motion and a second, any discussion?
Sure. So just for my own sort of personal edification, we have three great applications.
We do, we have an embarrassment of riches in Piedmont District.
We have three great applications, one of which is, as we've seen, is the current commissioner, and who was your, correct me if I'm wrong, but who was your original appointment. And she seems that she wants to do it again. And the Planning Commission is always in the middle of work. But they're currently, their plate's quite full. And just so that I know for your personal preference, as you just put forth Mr. Sisk's application, it feels a bit like changing horses midstream, a little bit. And for me, I would like to know maybe a little bit further your sort of inkling on that.
Well, you've put me in a very awkward position because I don't believe in speaking negatively about people, especially in a public setting. I will tell you that I believe there is a lot of urgency with the work in front of the Planning Commission now, and I want an appointee that feels that urgency. And I made an impassioned plea to the Planning Commission as a whole when they sent the comprehensive plan up to this board. That was in the high school in the fall of 2022, or 2020, I'm so sorry. So it was about 2 years ago now. I made an impassioned plea to all the members of the Planning Commission to please set aside their differences and find a way to work together and move through the work that's backlogged there at the Planning Commission. And I feel, like I said, I don't like to speak ill of anyone, but I want an appointee that I believe feels that as acutely as I do.
Well, I should say that I've known MK to be nothing but hardworking, incredibly well prepared, and I have no doubt that these three applicants would like, or the other two applicants would likely do the same. For continuity, I feel like it's good for the public to know why, boom, this person wants to do it. No, so that's why I'm asking.
Historically, the elected official of each district puts forth a nomination, and it's usually been honored.
So I'm currently chairing the Planning Commission. I think I've been doing that now for almost a year and a half, and I do want to, whatever way we go here, I want to thank MK Ishii for her really incredible service. And I work for a big global law firm, and so maybe I'm more accustomed to certain types of lawyers than others. She is definitely in the details, and I think sometimes it can be frustrating to get beyond decisions when we're in the weeds, but being in the weeds, especially on land use and zoning matters, I think is a place where we do need to spend time. And as Mr. Carney pointed out, she's always well prepared, always is editing and revising our meeting minutes for the better, and has been a good friend to me, and I think has been a truly positive force on the Planning Commission. So I do want to thank her for her service, and I talked to her yesterday and thanked her then as well. She is someone who I hope we can continue to keep involved in county land use policy and decision making, because I think she has a keen eye, as I said, for the details, and she seems to really have an interest in doing it. And I think if we're looking for people who are, quote unquote, conservative when it comes to land use, planning, and policy in Rappahannock County. I can't think of anyone more conservative than MK. She's, I think, staked out a one-person claim to little or no change, which I think resonates with a lot of us. So she's definitely, I think, had a very healthy perspective that's kept us on the straight and narrow on the Planning Commission. And I want to thank the other applicants, Mr. Sisk and Ms. Jones. And since I am on the Planning Commission, I look forward to working with any of them. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I would just like to say that I've enjoyed working with MK. She is definitely a hard worker that goes and finds information from multiple locations. It's not like she's got one particular area of expertise. She will reach out across the state and probably beyond, as far as I know, to make sure that she's got as much information as she can before she votes on anything. She's also been helpful in educating me when I first came on with some of the cell tower conversations that we had, and just getting a better feel for understanding the role of the Planning Commission person as well as the board. And I think she's done a great job, so I really appreciate her time and effort in the county. And my guess is she won't sit back and do nothing if she thinks there's a zoning issue that needs to be looked into deeply. So thank you, MK. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
And I would just say again, it's always an embarrassment of riches for Piedmont District. We are truly blessed to have so many people that are willing and talented in the roles of service for the district and for the county. Thank you all very much for your willingness to serve.
Absolutely.
And congratulations.
I look forward to working with you.
Moving into the Library Board of Trustees.
Yes, board was just informed of a resignation of Ms. Sidrow, leaving a vacancy on your Library Board of Trustees. There are no applications come forward. This was just a notice of vacancy ran in the newspaper, I think, last week, this week, or maybe this week, next week. So if you know anybody who might be interested in serving on the Library Board of Trustees, please ask them to complete an application. A lot of work coming in the future for that body as they consider how to invest their about $1.7 million they have in their bank, and perhaps other fundraising to improve the library.
I believe Ms. Sidrow was the only representative from Jackson District.
I think you're right.
And I would hope that we can make sure that we fill that seat with another Jackson resident. So I'll have my work cut out for me to beat some bushes.
The one comment that was in the email about having a younger person involved, I don't know that they need to be on the board, but I was just thinking with the school has a student representative that speaks to the school board. I'm wondering if it wouldn't make sense for the library to have some sort of liaison with the schools.
The library itself does have a teen group that's somewhat active, and so that is a conduit, and at least one of the members on the Board of Trustees has a child who just graduated this year and has been a conduit as well. So. Okay. But I'm sure that the board won't consider age at all in the appointment of a qualified candidate.
My children need to spend more time in libraries. How young can the applicant be? No.
I don't think there's a limit.
County Water and Sewer.
Yes, similar to your earlier discussion on the Recreational Facilities Authority, the Water and Sewer Authority also has some vacancies coming up. You have two terms that are coming to the end of their term on July 31st, 2022, that of Ms. Wick and Ms. Woodard. Ms. Wick has declined reappointment. Ms. Woodard has submitted an application reappointment, which is attached. So I would be placing a notice in the newspaper, as is typical and required for this body, unless there are other names that you know offhand that need to be, that should come forward or are interested. But at this time, you could reappoint Ms. Woodard for the next 4-year term. and keep looking for the position to fill Ms. Wick's spot.
Well, I do know that Sherry Woodard is chairing that organization currently. So I am glad she is seeking reappointment. And I know that they have several projects going on, and she is front and center on those. So I would think that we would want to just advertise for one opening.
Yeah, I agree.
And I did hear from Ms. Woodard yesterday and told her I would reappoint her enthusiastically at the earliest opportunity. So I guess that means now I am moving that we reappoint Sherry Woodard.
I'll second, and I second enthusiastically. She's doing a super job there.
And just to be clear, this will be for a 4-year term ending July 31, 2026.
Yep, starting July
Let's make it
31st, 22 to July 31st, 2026.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I think it's a wise move. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you.
You need a motion to advertise the additional.
No, that's, I would need a motion to waive your rules to not do it.
Got it.
And I would just like to quickly thank Ms. Wick and Ms. Woodard for their service, and Ms. Woodard for continued service.
Yeah, Ms. Wick gave me a great tour of the facility.
Yeah, I'm disappointed she's stepping off because she's been a great addition. So we'll find someone. That's a really important job.
Okay, going into old business, Town of Washington footpath.
Yes, at your last meeting, you recall there was discussion about potential perpetual easement, and the board suggested you weren't interested in doing that. Following that, I had conversations with the mayor, and he indicated that he felt his council would be more than happy to move forward with a license scenario. He and I met with his proposed contractor in the field to kind of nail down where the footpath would go, to see how it might conflict. So my art here, this part up by the monument, that's actually not county property. This little sliver up here is either public or town. And then towards the back, the idea is that it would be right up in that tree line to stay out of the field and probably out of the way of future development needs. And then cross across the kind of lower wet area with a boardwalk of some sort. The license would clearly identify the restrictions that the board has noted and the flexibility that the board needs. That would come back to you at a future meeting if you are willing to move forward in that mode.
Has this been marked on the ground?
It was in the field, but based on, and I have some photographs that show, you can see the flagging, but we did this flagging just after the mowing and pulled that flagging up just because it wouldn't survive. And the fact that this is all up in the trees, it didn't seem like any marking was really needed. This section is really the critical section because of the kind of the utilitarian nature of what's happening with the county's maintenance area. And then up on the other side of the little entrance road, it would just skip over that, really, and flow through here. Mr. Lowry he specializes in low-impact trail design, and so he would route it as he deems necessary with the contours to keep erosion down. And he has a way of doing that vertically and horizontally to keep from concentrating too much runoff at any given location.
Yeah, I think anything we can do to keep people from walking on Warren Avenue, it really continues to concern me. That's the route people are taking to get to the post office.
Yeah, and I haven't shown the rest of the path is in the earlier document, and would generally route people around along the side of the road and then through and behind to the backside of the post office.
What do we need to do? Basically just say...
Well, I just want to make sure that we're on the right path, and then Mr. Goff and I will get back with Mr. Krim and work out the license language so that it's flexible as needed and not perpetual in any way, and pretty much allows the board to do anything you want to do whenever you want to do.
And that's all we cared about at the last meeting, I think.
I mean, we'll have the other language that we worked with our insurance company about hold harmless and all that, so that there's no liability for the county.
I don't think this is a good idea. I feel like I should say that. I don't support this. I don't know how everybody else feels. I know that the town, sometimes exerts pressure on the county complex, and I'm concerned that this would be used to exert additional pressures on the county complex in the future. And I worry about it being routed around the utility area. It welcomes people into areas that they normally wouldn't be going. I think when you are trying to make a path, people vote with their feet. That's what I've read in some of the planning articles. So if people are already voting with their feet and using a certain path, then you should probably figure out how to make that a path. I have a feeling this will not turn out well for the county, but if y'all think it's a good idea, I'm 1 of 5.
Do we need would it help if we voted on it, or would it be a motion to continue working with the town? Since it sounds like we're not
Any action the board would
unanimous
want to
agreement
take,
on
I
this.
mean, you can certainly make it clear that this is not something the board's interested in, and then the town will go look for other opportunities.
I'll make a motion that county administrator and county attorney continue working with the town attorney to finalize a plan for this footpath as it's now been revised in terms of routing with all the protections that we requested at our last meeting, including the hold harmless liability coverage, and then also, most importantly, total flexibility and no easement in perpetuity, basically making sure that if and when we need to pull up the path, we may.
It's a long motion.
Good thing we record these meetings.
That's right.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I just say that, and I mentioned this to the mayor on Friday, you know, this whole thing with the last proposal that they sent us with that perpetuity, this left a bad taste in my mouth. I mean, they never heard us as a board say anything about that. I don't know where they got some kind of idea to put something forward like that, so it just leaves a bad taste in my mouth dealing with somebody that tries to pull something like that.
I have a motion. I need a second before we go into discussion.
I'll second.
Thank you. Now, further discussion. I do believe our staff is going to use it as well, so if we can make it a path that is easily accessed and doesn't get in the way of our maintenance and any issues there, I mean, a walking path that gets you off a road, I think is a good idea.
Yeah, I think that a walking path is a great idea in the town. It's for multiple reasons. I do not want to be encumbered by, in any way, shape, or form, when we move to do what we're going to do by having to negotiate at all with the town.
That's how we got here.
So we need to be able to go in and out of it when we want.
Yep.
And then I'm okay with it.
That's how we
than
got
that,
here from last month.
No.
So my other question is, how does the town have that little sliver? How is that not part of the county complex?
Which sliver do you speak of?
That
It's
little
not the
first sliver.
sliver between the memorial and the church.
Well, the church, this building, the Methodist church was swapped with the Presbyterian church at some point in time.
Correct.
So that was town. And then this parcel was, I don't know if it was separated before then or never yours, or where this monument is. But when the swap happened, you picked up this lot and this lot. They're very small. So I'm not totally sure, but when we just did the survey with Racy, and this little rectangle, I believe is public, like a stub street, paper street from Jet Street.
And it's town.
Well, it's maybe public, maybe.
Does it include the little plaque that's there? Is that
The little
structure?
monument, this
Yeah.
this is.
Is that in the town or us?
That is not ours. Yeah. However, the town has suggested they would be willing, the mayor has suggested the town would likely be willing to work with the county should that need to be an entrance to a future building. And however the land straightens out and the monument fits into that.
I think that this is a good time to incorporate that idea into the agreement.
I agree.
We'll talk about that tonight.
If we're building trust and faith with the town, I mean, it should be a two-way street.
I'll have to put that into this license agreement, I guess.
But we got a file on that monument.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But it's my understanding that this license agreement will come back to the board for final approval. So that was my impression. Is that what you intended?
Mr. Whitson?
The motion.
Yeah.
All right. If we're finished on discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
The question is that we are going to make that monument removal as part of this agreement? That wasn't in the motion.
I think you were talking about that in the context of the separate boundary line adjustment.
No, I think
No, I'm talking about in terms of this. But he was saying that we could craft that when it comes back.
Yeah.
And put it in.
It wasn't in the motion, so there's no instruction to staff to do that. I mean, we can say we agree with that, but if it's not in the motion, then I don't know that it was actually, staff may not have a complete understanding of what we're talking about.
Should the motion have like a phrase like to explore the possibility of moving the monument?
Further exploration of that, if we could go back and revisit that vote.
Just want to maybe amend the motion.
I'll amend the motion to add to what's already a lengthy motion, that additional instruction to examine
Possibility.
the possibility of,
To explore the future ingress and
There you
the
go.
location of the monument.
I'm glad you're an engineer.
Ben, do
I'll
you
second.
You second.
I'll
Okay.
make the motion.
We have an amended motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
All right. Water Resources Protection and Monitoring, we're still waiting on.
Yeah, this is just a placeholder. Mr. White did provide the information that I shared with you, just came in just before your last meeting, the Community Response Network well site, the two proposed locations. He's still waiting for people on his end to send him that agreement that the board would have to consider, and once that's available, bring it before the board.
All right, new business, Board Policy 310.
Ms. Nick and I have discussed this. She brought to my attention the fact that from time to time there are requests for reimbursement for purchases that are not related to travel. The nature of county government is such that local governments can purchase goods and services without sales tax or goods without sales tax. But if somebody seeks reimbursement and goes out and buys a roll of paper towels, for example, they're going to have to pay tax. So what this policy does is it discourages people from buying things themselves and seeking reimbursement after the fact. We've put in place a number of mechanisms to help staff do that, whether it be our corporate Amazon account or other corporate accounts. We have limited credit cards, which causes this problem sometimes because it's hard for people to make purchases directly through to the county. That said, what this does is it updates your policy 310 that you already have that guides purchases, adds a pretty simple paragraph that speaks to the reimbursement process and adds another form that people would use when they are seeking that reimbursement. This doesn't fully prohibit people from getting reimbursements, but it strongly states the preference is to have the county make these purchases. Because this policy 310 was adopted by resolution, then it is appropriate for the board to amend it by resolution. It is cumbersome, and so what I've built into this resolution is that you would authorize the attached policy as written to replace the earlier one and allow future modifications to the policy to be made by motion. And if the board doesn't want to do that, then we can strike that part from that motion.
I think it's a straightforward change, and both you and Ms. Nick are in favor of it, I would make a motion that we adopt the resolution as attached in the packet.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? My only question is if someone goes out and buys that paper towel and didn't use the correct new way of doing things, will they be reimbursed for the paper towel but not the tax?
Well, the form is an after-the-fact thing, so, and it suggests that should be submitted within 10 days. It's not a shall, but.
Okay. Okay. Any other discussion?
That would be a way to do it.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Given this resolution.
Oh, it's roll call, sorry. Mr. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Smith? Aye. Mr. Carney?
Aye.
Mr. Whitson?
Aye.
And I also. All right. Hiring process.
Okay. Back around the time I was hired, the board adopted policy 101, which speaks to the hiring process for certain employees, and it calls out several key hiring policy for key positions, and it talks about county attorney, zoning administrator, building official, director of human resources, special projects, but it does have it kind of more open-ended, and the assistant county administrator position, which the board has authorized and funded, is not directly listed, but it occurs to me that the board would likely want to be involved. And basically what this policy states is that that the board would like to be involved in the interview and selection of department director level positions. And it states that the board should take this up at an open meeting and provide direction as to how you would like to be involved.
If I could, I was on the board at the time that this was discussed, and this was actually discussed improperly in that meeting because not one member of the board would certify that we properly conducted a closed meeting after that. So anyway, I very, very well remember that day, and your suggestion here that to be the chair and one other member excludes 3 members of the board. So I'm not in favor of this process here. I think if the board's going to be involved, the board should be involved.
Well, I guess that is the core of the question is, this person, I believe, would be reporting to me, and therefore I should be the hiring decision maker, I guess, but do want the board to feel like and be involved and shape that decision process. It doesn't work very well if the person who's hired doesn't fit with the board, and it doesn't work well if the person hired doesn't fit with me.
I understand that, and it does make it a bit maybe cumbersome, but I think if the board is going to be involved, the board should be involved, not just two members. To include 2 members only, you exclude 3. So then I don't see how the board could be involved. You would have 2 members of the board involved and not the board.
Right, that is very accurate. It would not be a board decision. It would be my decision with input from 2 board members. And that is very distinct from that being a board decision.
But we wouldn't, even if you're making the decision as to the hiring, you still have excluded with your method 3 members of the board in the entire process.
That is true.
That's not good. Because if you're not around, we've got to work with that individual. So it ought to be some sort of happy medium here where, we come up with a way where the board can work with you to go through this process.
Is it, I guess, just thinking about the process, and I've never been through this, so what we're talking about here is you and 2 board members would be part of the interview process, but presumably those 2 board members would then report back to the Board of Supervisors in some form about the interviews and candidates and qualifications, et cetera. Is that how it would work?
Well, I mean, you certainly could. it is not my intent is not my intent through the recommendation to seek the endorsement of a majority of the board. Right. I don't think that was the intent of the policy.
I beg to differ. I think that was the intent of the policy. When I brought out the fact that your contract, as it was written, would allow you to basically, at that time, an individual that we had never met prior to October, that you would have more authority than anybody in the county had ever had. Several supervisors balked at that, and that's why this was drawn up. But this was drawn up. We made it legal after the fact, but it was drawn up improperly in a closed meeting. It was very torturous affair that we went through during that hiring process, and it should have never been like that to start with, but that's all behind us now. And I think if we're going to move forward, then we should do it with board involvement, as that was the idea at that time.
To try and get all 5 of us in an interview process has the
You may not be
potential
able
of
to do that,
really slowing everything
the way
down.
that Mr. Whitson mentioned, it may be, some way to do it, but I mean, to only have 2 members, then you exclude 3.
I mean, I thought the process with Mr. Polster worked well. Would you include other direct reports, or?
Probably not direct reports, but it would be my intention to have others on that interview committee.
I don't think it would be wise to have, if this is going to be a senior position, to have direct reports weighing in on their future chain of command.
Could we, as I was thinking out loud, Mr. Fraser, it doesn't sound like you hated my idea. So would one way to kind of remedy your concern be that we have 2 board members who are working with Mr. Curry on the review of the candidates, hiring, but before any hire is made, we're all brought up to speed on who's been interviewed, the relative qualifications of each.
I think we should see it, yeah. I think the rest of the board should see that, but, it makes it a little bit of a cumbersome process, but I think it has to be done.
And I think that solves a problem. I think that Ms. Donahue is correct. Given the labor market as it is, it's already hard enough to get people into interview, and I would hate to make that process more cumbersome by then trying to get 5 of us in a room for an interview, which, based on my experience in interviews, that's not a good way to interview. So maybe if 2 of us...
That's the way we did it to hire Mr. Curry. How else would you do that? You're talking about hiring the person that would have to take over in the event that he was incapacitated for whatever reason.
Yeah, and
well, not necessarily. That's a decision for the board to make at a later time. This person specifically being hired as an assistant, not as a deputy. And the last time you had the need for someone to fill in, there was an interim brought in. So that could happen in the future as well.
I think we could...
that was done improperly too.
Yeah, so I mean, I'd be inclined, and I don't know if this, and stop me, Mr. Curry, if this doesn't work, but I would put forward a motion that we move to authorize the county administrator to, should we work off of this recommended action? Yeah, authorize the county administrator to hire an assistant county administrator following interviews to be held by an interview committee to be formed by the county administrator that includes the chair of the board of supervisors or designee of the chair and additional board member, and then following a review of the applicants and the interviews with the entire board prior to any hiring. Does that work? It's like adding an extra step. I'm not feeling super sharp today, so I apologize if that's not concise enough.
And given the little bit of knowledge I have on what happened in the past, we would have to do that in an open discussion?
No, that'd probably be a personnel matter.
Right.
Okay. There's a lot of debate about that across the state. I guess just to put it on the table, does the board view itself to be the deciding factor in who's hired or veto a recommendation?
I think it would just be,
I think the Code of Virginia empowers your county administrator who's been duly appointed to make this hire. And it is my interest to do that and to do it in a way that involves the board to the greatest extent possible. And by bringing the full board in, it drives, it's counter to that Code of Virginia authority.
the intent of that extra step was simply to brief the entire board at the conclusion of the interview process. It wasn't, I did not contemplate any,
Veto authority.
I just don't want there to be a problem at the end of the process
I'm just,
where we're viewing the process differently, and that doesn't serve any of us.
right, I take Mr. Frager's point that it would be good if the entire board was briefed prior to any hiring decision. And that's not calling for the board as a whole to take action on the hire. So I don't think it undermines your authority as codified and as you just described.
All right, so that was a motion.
Yeah.
And I just want to reiterate that I don't see it as undermining of authority, but I do think if you have more people in the experience, you might learn something that you wouldn't otherwise.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Yes, now, who is the makeup of the committee?
You and I did Mr. Polster. I don't know availability-wise.
So the board should not create the committee, even if this is a committee that's formed by me. It's not a public body. It's not going to be FOIA'd. I will be happy to reach out to each and every one of you to gauge your interest and try to work out a schedule. I think it's dangerous to have the board start talking about who you want to assign to the committee, because then it starts to feel like your committee.
Okay.
And summer
I'm okay with
schedules
that.
being what they are, it might be good to be flexible too.
All right, you let us know, or you'll be reaching out to.
Could we take a brief recess, please,
Sure.
Madam Chairman? Thank you.
Absolutely. 3:17.
Mr. Goff for a moment here. This conversation has come up regarding some events that have happened in the county in the past. And some of our access routes to facilities are not very good. And there's a concern that should there be a well-attended event, and there be an incident at that event, whether it be a weather event, incident, a fire incident, that just when you would need to get emergency responders into that site, the patrons at the event would be streaming out of the site. And so that kind of presupposes that you would need some dual travel with access to sites that might be used for heavily attended events. Now, those are subjective things. What is heavily attended and what is an event? And so Mr. Goff and I talked about this a little bit. And how could the ordinance be modified in a way that was comprehensive, all zoning districts, not just look at certain uses in the use table. This would be a widespread, all-encompassing requirement that if you were drawing a large number of cars, then a prerequisite to do that would be to have a travelway that's hard surface that could allow two-way traffic. Now that doesn't necessarily mean two-way traffic width of asphalt. It could be some mixture of gravel and asphalt or all gravel. Your type 2 subdivision road standard allows as narrow as 12-foot wide travelway with shoulders. But that might not meet this requirement. And you need that for certain scenarios like some subdivision requirements, as well as now for tourist homes, for example, you need to be able to meet that type 2 subdivision road standard. But a tourist home isn't going to bring multiple cars to that event, so to that use. And so what Mr. Goff came up with a couple versions. We bounced versions back and forth, And came down to two very small changes to the zoning ordinance that we think would get at the heart of this public safety concern. And that would be by adding a new definition to the zoning ordinance, traffic event impacting safe access. So it's a very specific type of event. And that's defined as a gathering that attracts 10 or more motor vehicles, motorcycles, or motorhomes, or any combination, and then some legalese of how those are defined in other sections of the code, 46.2.
A question, I guess, what was the impetus of this? What was the...
We've had some concerns and complaints in the past about some uses that haven't even gone through zoning because there might have been an agritourism carve-out.
Right, but so that's not a permitted event, so how would you enforce something that's not permitted to start with?
Well, it would be an enforcement mechanism, or if somebody came to us ahead of time saying, or we saw advertisement ahead of time, we could say, whoa, as a matter of fact, the Rappahannock County Code, section 170.24, which already speaks to frontage and approved access, states that access to any traffic event impacting safe access, you need to have two-way traffic.
Well, I brought up something like this back in 2016, and the county attorney at that time basically said that this one event that everybody was concerned about because it was on a right-of-way and it crossed several other property owners, and they were complaining about this type of thing, that when they had the several hundred cars back there, that it impacted their safety, and yet we were told that, you know, it was a not-for-profit thing. We couldn't even permit the event.
Well, I think this is a snapshot in time of what you heard at that time. Mr. Goff and I, bounced this back and forth on how you might be able to get at that, even though it's not, even if it is not a permitted use. We believe that this is an enforceable part of your zoning ordinance. A use requiring a permit.
Right, okay. I mean, I think we're on the same page. Yeah. I just want that to be out there that but we're not talking about something that wasn't allowed to start with.
And as I noted in the narrative in board docs, the recommendation is to look at this. If this angle of protecting public safety seems to maybe make sense, refer to the Planning Commission and ask them to kind of consider it, put some meat on its bones if it needs more, and then, matriculate that back through the process, which is to change the zoning ordinance. You have to have public hearings at both bodies. I've highlighted 10 or more. What is the right number there? And
that could easily apply to a family reunion.
It could, and so those are the intended, unintended consequences that we need to really keep in mind here, that we don't want to affect the typical by right uses that family enjoys on their parcel, once every 3 years when they bring in a whole bunch of family. But at the same time, if that family has a tragedy, we want the ambulance and the fire truck to get in there.
And Mr. Frazier, you asked a good question, the impetus, and I would just say, generally speaking, at least for me, the impetus for going in this direction stems largely from, I'll just call it unregulated agritourism activities that effectively rise to commercial activities and ag and conservation zoning districts that in some cases might be accessed by a private lane or an inadequate road, where basically our hands are tied from a state perspective, a Code of Virginia perspective, because agritourism activities are allowed by right and not subject to zoning related permitting, but then we, it seems, should still have some ability to do our job and protect public's health and safety.
Especially if it's a shared right away.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Now, this also, I think, would
family on that road.
This would come into play also as the board is considering a special exception for a conference center or something like that.
Well, and I think
This
that-
would then clearly set the standard. Well, if you want to have a conference center or whatever, it's going to attract X number of vehicles, you have to have two-way
Well, there
traffic.
was some years ago, a parcel in Rappahannock, in Jackson District, Amosville, it was 150 plus acres. It was on a 15-foot right-of-way. So it's large enough to handle something like a conference center or something like that, but the road wouldn't have handled any amount of traffic.
We think subjectively that those are good rationale to reject a special exception, but then when you tangle with the court, sometimes you never know. But if you codify something, that should really make it clear. Again, intended, unintended, and this really needs to be thought about in that vein and what the right threshold number is if this is a good approach. What I do think is that, and Mr. Goff and I did not intend to necessarily target any particular uses.
No, I don't think this is generic looking.
Yeah, and, but with that said, we do know that the Code of Virginia allows us to apply public safety standards to some by right uses.
Well, I think it's even beyond being able to get in as people are able to get out. Because our responders are volunteers and they live all over the county.
That's true.
And before they can even get out to respond, they may have to get out of an event.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or
Great
get past an event. And,
Great point.
Pass an event, right?
yeah, and that could affect our ability to respond in that way too. So I do think it is impactful on these narrower roads. I don't know that 10 is the right number. It does sound like it would exceed that for a family reunion or a graduation party. But I mean, those are the details to be sorted out in the language.
Yeah.
But I do think it's necessary.
And we thought from an enforcement standpoint, it really wasn't a number of people, it was the number of vehicles. That is the public safety impacting, the nexus of the impact to public safety. It's the number of vehicles that are trying to get through a certain restricted area.
And I agree with you. I thought immediately of the sunrise service that's always held on Red Oak.
Yeah.
Which is way more cars, and there's no way you can get up there. And then I started thinking about the 4th of July and the point-to-points, and those would be travelways in fields. So I think thinking about it broadly so that it would work, but it wouldn't limit or have an unintended consequence, for instance, for like the sunrise service on Red Oak. There are some roads that are tricky by nature, and
Well, Red Oak's a dead end. I mean, I
It's a
don't
dead
want to
end.
get too much into the weeds, but Red Oak's a dead end, and they could, offer to have somebody on site if we were to set. But I don't see that being an issue. But I do think it's a good thing to look at.
Mr. Goff,
for sure, yeah.
on 4th of July and point to point, you and I talked about that briefly. What's your perspective on that as it fits with this proposed amendment?
It occurred to me that usually, fire and rescue and sheriff's office is already there. So we could carve out, I wrote down some notes after discussing with some of you, that there could be an exception for law enforcement and fire and rescue already on the scene before the traffic event impacting safe access would exempt them from that. So that you could have like cross, as you say, Mr. Carney, like where you're parking in the field at Benvenue or at Thornton Hill or wherever for 4th of July. It's not really a travel way, but yet we just exempt that event that already has fire and rescue on scene, but preserve still ingress and egress, quick ingress and egress for not only them, but everybody else.
Okay.
Mr. Curry and I thought, well, what if there was a fire at the event? It's gonna be like a stampede to get out. So there also was, I had originally drafted it with a language in it for turnouts every 50 feet if the roadway wasn't sufficient, so that you could have turnouts. It would be a little bit of an escape valve, like the Red Oak. And then I also wanted to point out, just for the record, since the board's discussing it, the legal authority for it is 15.22283, where it says that the purpose of zoning ordinances shall be for the general purpose of promoting health, safety, and general welfare, and then specifically on down to sub 4, to facilitate the provision of adequate police and fire protection, disaster evacuation, civil defense, transportation, et cetera, et cetera. Then also I'd like to point out the other enabling code section is just so it's clear that we're not doing anything that's not supported by the code. That no locality shall regulate or carry out any of the following activities at an agricultural operation as defined, unless there is a substantial impact on the health, safety, or general welfare of the public. And that's reiterated also in subparagraph 2.
What's that section?
Oh, I'm sorry, 15.22288.6, agricultural operation, local regulation of certain activities. And then the other code section that I was pointing out is just the general zoning.
That's great.
Code that allows us to do things and to facilitate public safety as part of the zoning. So just to make it clear that there is statutory authority for the locality to enact such an ordinance.
So I agree with the your possible additional language related to the sort of the classic annual field events like the point-to-point and 4th of July, and so I think we should add that. And I also think
This is public safety on site.
Yeah.
And I think a direct traffic.
Yeah, and then I also think it important that we protect family reunions if we could, without kind of going against the spirit of this, which is public safety.
They don't all show up, but I mean, it could be quite a bit of some of these families.
Yeah, so I don't know.
I couldn't hear you, Mr. Frank.
I say they don't all show up, but it could be quite a few cars at a family reunion in Rappahannock.
If it's a Jenkins family reunion.
Especially the Fraser family reunion.
I don't know, Art, if that works.
Working on the number, I think, helps that.
Okay.
I think the more that you can keep it comprehensive, the more defensible it probably will be.
That's correct. If it's a general application in all zoning districts.
Okay.
And for all activities, because you can't say that a family reunion with 50 cars is any less problematic than a wine tasting with 50 cars. Because it's still a public safety issue. So it must apply uniformly in order to be valid.
Okay.
I think the adoption of something like this, I think may, that will weigh heavily on people when they have a family reunion. They'll
What is
say,
the right venue for that?
Yeah, maybe they can't have it here anymore. Maybe we need to, park over there in the field or something like that. Just.
Well, I'll try to move this along with the one additional change on, however you phrase it, Mr. Curry, was presence of emergency.
Public safety. I don't know how I think so the action you'd be taking would refer the topic to the planning commission.
Correct.
And ask them to consider adding.
That's my motion.
Public safety.
Yeah, my motion is, let's refer these proposed amendments to 170-8B and 170-24 to the Rappahannock County Planning Commission for further consideration, including possible language related to pre-positioned fire and rescue and EMS personnel at field events.
And should I include that turnout language in the draft that we send to the planning commission?
I'd rather not.
And the law enforcement?
The public safety would include law enforcement. I think it gets problematic with turnouts, I think. I would like to see two-way traffic on a hard surface, all-weather surface.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, any discussion? Sorry.
I would just say, I think most people that have events exercise a lot of common sense and thoughtfulness already in their events. And so I hope this isn't seen as heavy-handed. This is just in the interest of public safety. It's not something we can ignore, and we really should entertain this.
And I think in addition to that, with agritourism, which is effectively turning ag land into value-added commercial use. I mean, I have one. I think it's really important moving forward that we do keep an eye on health and safety. so that because there are a lot of cars that can go up and down a lane for a winery that's, you know,
And
or ourselves.
I mean, looked at your road, hopefully, you know, if it's not wide enough, then would be a thought that you really should consider making it wide
Well,
enough
it's an
for two-way
important,
traffic.
it is an important move for health and safety, genuinely, because, you know, in tourist homes as well, you know, you maybe 4 people are only allowed to spend the night there, but how do you know how many cars are going up and down the road? I mean,
Right.
you know, people have, anyway.
Yep.
Great.
Okay. We'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Art, Gary, thanks a lot for your work on that. You're welcome.
Referrals to Rules Committee.
I asked this to be put on the agenda because during our budget session, there have been some discussion of having some financial policies, particularly relating to fund balances and spending processes.
Debt capacity.
So this is sort of a first stab at that, and it's a very rough draft of a finance policy. But you know, if you want to do something, you got to start it, and so this is a start. It's Orange counties, and I've changed some of the numbers, and I think that we should refer this to the Rules Committee, and I'd encourage you all to read through it and read other financial policies of other counties, and if there's some you like, please send them my way, and perhaps it's something we can refer to the Rules Committee next month so that we can develop those policies for the board.
Great, thanks a lot. And as we're talking about courthouse renovations or replacement, I mean, my lingering concern, which I posed, I think, to our auditor, but then I realized that they're not in a position to answer it, is based on our ongoing revenue, fund balance, et cetera, what is our carrying capacity for debt? Because clearly we're almost down to no debt, but then potentially taking on some debt for renovation or construction of new buildings. So I would just ask that be, at least as far as I'm concerned, that should be a priority, because I think I've never had that question answered because nobody knows the answer to it. I mean, I think we could probably ballpark it, but it'd be nice to have a policy related to how much debt, all things being equal, we can carry in the normal course of business. So that'd be my one point of emphasis, and thank you for getting this started.
Well, and then I would just add, I forgot to mention, of course, I foresee as part of the process engaging our constitutional officers and reviewing drafts with them and integrating any concerns that they may have, and staff as well, so we can work through and have a policy in place.
You said this came out of Orange?
Orange County, yeah.
It's my intent to have the new hire bring expertise in this area, which would help overall. I did get a chance to read this, and I think in a lot of ways it makes sense, and there are some areas that would need to tweak. I like their focus and goal on trying to keep their capital and debt service kind of consistent, and I've tried to do that with this board over the last few years, where if you're shedding debt service, that we hold it aside for like what we've been calling pay-go, so you still keep the same bucket, and you can shift that bucket back and forth between debt service and pay-go capital. So I 100% agree that we need to move towards these policies, and Ms. Nick and I spoke about it this morning real quickly. But I would ask that you move it at a pace that would allow your new hired expertise to weigh in.
Sure. I mean, I think this is a 6 to 9 month project. I don't think this is a 3-month project.
Thanks for getting it rolling.
Okay. Thank you.
So do we need to take any action?
Other than review it and send me any thoughts or
Okay.
policies you like, I
Great.
don't think we do.
Great.
All right, going into board committee reports. Building committee.
Building committee met last Friday. Due to several members having scheduling issues, we were later in the month doing it. We were working with not necessarily changing the scope of work, but just, I guess, redefining the scope of work with Randy along with Riley Wilson. And he's going to be working on a more, I guess, detailed scope of work for a separate courthouse building. And 2 of our members are going to be continuing work with space needs with the end users, the county staff, namely the sheriff's office and I guess Mr. Goff as well.
And building zoning.
And building and zoning, yeah, they're just going to try and define the numbers. We got rough numbers, so we're trying to just boil it down and try and get a better idea of what it is that we're going to be working on as far as space requirements for the various county departments. That's kind of where we are. We had a robust discussion going on, and we had the mayor was present and try to smooth over things with the county a little bit by telling us that they pretty much have a new focus with their ARB. I reminded him that we still wanted this property out here to be removed from ARB as part of the boundary agreement. And it doesn't look like the town actually wants a boundary agreement. I think they want a boundary acquiescence. So there you have it.
I just add we spent a lot of time talking about procurement mechanisms for exterior work and trying to find the best
Way to do that.
for procurement that meets local and state regulation.
Yep, we spent a lot of time on that, and that's kind of above my pay grade.
Any steps on the new roof, the roof project? that we've
On
got?
this, or the,
I think we were starting on the sheriff's office.
well,
with that.
they think that roof is salvageable, it's just not anchored down well.
Oh.
And they have a method of going in from underneath and soldering, anchoring, and then screwing it into the wood, make sure the wood's, because you would have to work on the wood whether you put a new roof on or fix this one, but yeah, they thought that the roof is salvageable.
That's great.
The painting project is moving forward, the roof painting project.
Well, yeah, and but the problem is trying to find a way to make sure that we have, and I guess we're going to have to be doing that, is to let some sort of a RFI or RFP, we hadn't really decided on that, but come up with a way to make sure that we pre-qualify certain contractors, and then maybe with the procurement laws of the way they are, we can figure out a way to select a contractor from that group. So obviously we don't want to go low bid and have the chimneys fall over.
Thanks for all your work.
Thank you for all the effort.
Well, it's time consuming, and we're doing it for the board and for the people. I mean, we want the best outcome.
Good.
At the best price. But it does look like that roof is salvageable.
That's great.
It's just, for some reason, it's not anchored properly. It could be that the anchoring in some places has just come loose.
Well, thank you.
That's what we're trying.
Yep.
Save what we can, where we can.
Recreational Facilities Authority.
We had no meeting last month. We didn't have enough physically present to have a quorum, so we pushed it to
And I'll just
agenda.
tack on there to, on Saturday, Bonnie Beers, as I mentioned earlier, organized the free family fishing day, which is actually part of a statewide, no license access to public water day that the Department of Wildlife Resources does every year. So it was moderately attended. We put about 200 rainbow and brook trout in the Rush River, which was a lot of fun. And Miss Downey and Mr. Curry were part of the bucket brigade. And it was hot, and
Fish were jumping out of the bucket.
fish were jumping out of the buckets. And we eventually got them in the river. People caught fish on Saturday, which was very cool. I want to thank the Rappahannock County Park Foundation for their generous donation of the money that allowed for the stocking of the river, along with financial contributions from our treasurer, Debbie Nick, who was really happy to help, and also to Becky Burr, who put in money to help with the stocking. And then two individuals from the Department of Wildlife Resources, our local conservation officer, Tim Bostic, was there for part of the day, and not writing tickets because he didn't need a license. And then also to John Odenkirk, fisheries biologist with DWR, who was there all day and was handing out rods for children to use, and even gave one away to a young man who didn't have his own. So very cool. And then a number of organizations, including RLEP and PEC, were there to talk about wildlife habitat, et cetera. So I think it'll be bigger and better next year, but it was a nice renewal post-pandemic of what I think hopefully should be an annual event that will attract a lot of interest. So thank you for everyone who contributed.
And now you have somewhere real close to go fishing.
Absolutely. And I hate to admit this, but the fish are still in there. So I was kind of hoping to keep that a secret, but that's not fair. So, but yeah, I think the deputies at the sheriff's department were given a sneak preview on Friday. And I had heard from Janie Jenkins that Robbie Fincham and his son caught something like 15 fish. So now he's a fisherman, so it might have been 10 and not 15. But I heard 15. But it was a great event, a beautiful day, and it's the sort of thing I think if we just sort of scatter events like that throughout the year, it raises everyone's spirit. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Temperatures, you almost have to get them out of there. They're going to anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And we did have pretty hard rain, I think the next day after we stocked, and my son and I went down there. I was expecting to see all the fish in one hole, and I didn't see any fish. So the water went up a little bit and they scattered, and I think that's probably good. So they're finding holes where they can at least hold on for a while, but I'm sure it'll get fished pretty hard.
Be getting them down at Rock Mills?
You might.
Public Safety Committee, we are meeting tomorrow evening. Rules Committee.
It looks like we're meeting at the same time as the ball game.
Oh,
So
that is true.
yeah. I kind of thought about that earlier, but I didn't want to tell her that we may not be over there. But we may
Make
have
it
to
a quick
hurry up.
Make it a quick meeting.
Just hurry up.
Rules Committee did not meet, but I was wondering, is the Public Safety Committee, can y'all get feedback on that language that we just referred to the Planning Commission?
Oh, the
Sure we can.
parking?
Yeah, I think that would be good.
Yeah, we would have several of those people present
Yeah.
that would be involved in that.
Okay. Planning Commission.
Sure. A very active period for the Planning Commission. Our regular meeting was May 18th. That evening, longer meeting than I like to have, but it was necessary. We had multiple public hearings. The Swindlers to operate basically a wedding venue in their barn on their property. And then a special use permit for a tourist home in Old Hollow. It's a property many people know about. And so that will be brought up again at our next meeting in, I guess, a little over a week. And then an ordinance amendment to section 170-55, which is, we've discussed this previously, this is the language about the preliminary review and
Of special use.
of special use and special exception permits by the Planning Commission. And basically the idea is to not have anything come to the Planning Commission until there's a complete application with the zoning administrator that's deemed complete, at which time a public hearing will be scheduled automatically, because we're getting into this kind of hybrid process where sometimes we're having public hearings at the Planning Commission, sometimes not. So this revision will ensure that every permit application that goes to the Planning Commission will in fact have a public hearing attached to it. And then in that process, we're eliminating sort of the soft preliminary review extra step that was in some cases used to punt applications along to the BZA without a public hearing at the Planning Commission.
But, I mean, historically, everything had sort of a public hearing, but at the same time, it's so cumbersome for something so simple sometimes.
Yeah, so I think it's a good compromise, and I think it's a good cleaning up of our ordinance in that regard. And I want to thank both Mr. Light and Ms. Ishii for their leadership on this issue. And then we met on June 1st, just last week. We had a work session with the Berkeley group, and you'll find on board docs a copy of their zoning ordinance and subdivision ordinance diagnostic report, which I think is a very strong document. Ms. Donahue and Mr. Carney did sit in the audience for that meeting, and I believe we've got a work session of the Board of Supervisors scheduled.
It is scheduled for the end of June, although I know the chair has informed me that she's not available that night, so that we might want to work to reschedule that schedule.
And that's for us to hear from the Berkeley group and hear their presentation of this diagnostic report. That'll form the foundation then for our systematic reworking of the zoning ordinance and subdivision ordinance. And once you review the document, you'll see the key takeaways. And in fact, what I just addressed about that extra preliminary review step, it was something that they actually focused on, and that is how we're handling permits vis-a-vis the Planning Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Board of Supervisors, and streamlining that whole process. So from multiple directions, including through our outside consultants, we seem to be headed in the same direction, which is good.
I think I might be responsible for the Planning Commission doing those preliminary reviews, because when I got here, I read the ordinance and said, hey, how come you're not following what the ordinance is?
Oh, I see.
And so started doing what the ordinance is. Well, the reason you probably hadn't been because it's a pain.
Yeah.
So the solution there is to change the ordinance, if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, and I think it in some funny way it works out where we're actually now going to have public hearings for every SUP and SEP permit application that comes to us. But I encourage you to look at the Berkeley Group report in advance of whenever we hear from them, whether it's the 29th or some later date.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was very informative, and I'm looking forward to having consistency that is more clear, I think, to our citizens as to what they'll be approached or asked to support their action. Everybody's the same. Or the certain requests are the same. It's not because you live in this section, you need to give this where you don't have to. I really like the consistency setting expectations. I think is great.
And there was strong recognition from the Berkeley group that Rappahannock is not typical, and they understood that. They understood that our goal is not necessarily to focus our development and drive development and encourage development like some other localities do, and that we have a different approach here.
Yep.
So that was refreshing for them to get it. Hopefully we'll be able to benefit from their experience and recommendations, and then have a plan to go forward, which will be a lot of work into the future.
Yep. Fire levy board.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah.
All right. Treasurer's reports. Anything?
Can we look at cash flow?
Yeah.
Sure. Point one thing out in cash flow. See the orange from last year? We had a big bump. It's kind of flat. That was first tranche of ARPA.
Yeah.
We have not received the second tranche of ARPA yet.
We're gonna have a
Nick
bump.
just pointed out to me or emailed me saying she haven't got it yet. All the paperwork's done, so I kind of thought we'd have it by now, but that extra 700,000, so I guess we were dropping it around 700,000 a month, and so that's why it went flat. And so at some point we're going to see it run flat here.
It'd be nice to get it before the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah.
Well,
But
all the draft policy that Ms. Smith forwarded on does do a good job of talking definitions of the different types of fund balance, whether it's restricted or not restricted, or so it'll be good to be able to get that lexicon in here, and you'll be able to understand what dollars you have set on the side and what they can be used for. And the fund balance number, that 15% in that policy is really the number at the end of the year. And we've talked before, that's kind of not super important.
Right.
Except for the fact that it predicts what you have at the low part of the year.
Right.
So, but the end of the year is a fixed point in time, and all the accounting is done, the prepaids and the accruals are all worked in. It's the only time where we really know where the books are on a fiscal year basis.
Yeah.
But the critical point is that low cash time.
Yeah. And the number I always tell people, at least currently, is about $6 million cash on hand, more or less. Is that
One could say excess cash on hand, but, you need that $6 million above what you need to float cash flow.
Yeah.
But it does, then on top of that, you talk about rainy day.
Yeah.
Hurricane, something weird happens and you need to dig into the coffers before you get reimbursed. Everything else, we're closing in on the end of the fiscal year. Everything looks fine. Don't see any concerns. You do have the budget amendment public hearing tonight to really true up the schools, expected revenues and expenses. And if not for that, you wouldn't have to do it, but theirs is pretty big, $500,000, which trips at 1%. So everything looks good. If you didn't open up the building permit report, $5 million. They're very, very busy in that office right now.
Mm-hmm.
These last couple of months have been very busy. 6 dwellings at $3.2 million. And various garages, accessory, commercial. A lot of work going on.
And everything
That's the
costs
biggest
so
number I
much.
can remember seeing on that monthly report.
I'm proud to say I'm part of that, and probably you too.
Yeah.
I just had a quick question about Page County picking up our batteries. Can I
Yes.
ask that real quick?
Sure.
So we have a vendor that usually picks them up, and they couldn't do it, and then Page did?
So historically, we worked with, I think it's Battery Mart out at Winchester.
Mm-hmm.
And they would drive down and pick up our batteries, and basically for the cost of driving down and getting them, they would take them. And no expense, no revenue. But basically, I think, just the whole market, employee market is tough, and they can't drive down and get them anymore. Whatever their issue is with their company. So we worked out with Page County that they will basically give us the same deal that the Battery Mart did. We just want them gone.
Yeah.
And we'd like to keep them out of the waste stream if we can. So the heavy metals will get recycled, and we have somebody to pick them up.
Since we're talking about, I guess, refuse and recycling, at least generally, I noticed at Flatwood where the 2 bulk trash bins are located, it's pretty beat up, and that really nice stairwell is kind of broken. What's the plan there?
Working with Mr. Shanks, we're likely going to put a concrete pad in that area for the 40-yarders. The recycling containers don't seem to have that much of an issue. Of course, where the compactors are, that's reinforced concrete slab because those things are heavy.
Right.
But we're having an issue with those 40-yard. And the stairs are getting banged up when the driver backs in on the driver's on the opposite side of the truck. So the other side's fine. But then you drop the container and it might shift.
Yeah.
So
it was just hard to navigate that area the other day after our shed clean out. I had plenty of stuff going in there. So great. I mean, I took a cooler full of waters down there a couple weekends ago just because it was hot, and it's always good to hear from people. And it seems like people are still pretty happy with the overall flow, at least at Flatwood. And I try to stop by down in Amosville every once in a while too. And I noticed you carved out that turn around the compactors at Amosville, which seems to have helped a lot.
it's my intent to put a concrete pad at the unload location at Amosville as well. That's mostly a winter issue. We have slip and fall issues on that area. So I've talked to a contractor about that and got a quote, but it was above bidding threshold, and it was just, once I get to that point, that's got to go on a list.
Yeah, right.
Whereas I could have just pulled the trigger and got it done, but it wasn't going to work out. This pad at Flatwood might just work out.
Yeah, that's really, really working well. So thanks again.
And it looks like our expenses are well in line for this fiscal year.
Yeah.
For Page County.
Approximate, or we're talking about, I mean, I think we're always talking about at least 225,000 reduction in where we were previously. Is that kind of where we're headed?
I don't recall the numbers off the top.
Yep.
Well, I always think about some of the things that you had us include, Mr. Curry, regarding gas. Didn't we include some things regarding transportation?
Well,
It's probably saving
And there's
us a lot of
escalators.
money.
There are some escalators on fuel price and different things, but we know what we're getting. And it's a long haul for those Page
Yeah.
vehicles to come all the way from Battle Creek down to
Yep.
Amosville.
Yeah.
And so that's all built in. We don't have to haggle about it after the fact or fight about how much they are owed for fuel. It's built into the contract.
Yeah, that's great.
One thing I want to mention, Mr. Carney and I were at, and also Mr. Curry were at the Scrabble School dedication, and I took the opportunity to talk with Superintendent Kenny from the Shenandoah National Park, and I very kind of reluctantly asked him, "Hey, how's it going with Page County trucks going up and over Thornton Gap?" He said, "Non-issue, no trash."
That's what I was gonna ask about, has
Yeah.
anybody noticed an
No, you never
increase or
see any
decrease?
trash.
The trash themselves, that's in the compactors.
Right.
There's
Right.
nothing blowing out of them. It's the bulk 40-yard containers, which are the biggest concern, and we hope for the most part that there isn't small stuff in them, because it's more money for us. But the drivers are very dedicated in getting those loads tarped well. So
I think I see less trash on 211,
Yeah,
stretch of Amosville.
he was very complimentary of our operation, and he said the only thing he said to me was, "Yeah, I see those trucks, and I see those trucks going up and over, and it's a long haul and it's slow for them,
Yeah.
but it doesn't seem to be adversely affecting park visitors or the park itself, which is great news." And that was always a concern on the front end as we were figuring out routing. So.
Heard from some people that I'm sure well within the speed limit, but those trucks loaded with a compactor full of trash past them going up the hill.
Oh wow!
So they're obviously very powerful.
Wow.
Healthy trucks.
Yeah, all right.
All right, matters presented by the board.
I do want to just point out again the Comcast, the 540
So annoying.
thing. So everybody knows now you must dial 10 digits here. The next important date is June 14th when they say they will start issuing 826 numbers. So you might dial 826 to get your next door neighbor.
826.
Yeah, area code 826.
So sad.
Too many cell phones and other widgets that use phone numbers, and they've all been used up.
I can remember 7 digits, but 10 is like really throws me off.
All right, Mr. Fraser, anything matters presented by the board?
Well, I guess I had a question. It's my understanding that the board chair and vice chair attended a meeting with REC, some sort of a dinner meeting at your place of business?
I was out of town.
You were out of town?
I attended it. I received an invitation, which actually I didn't see until they called me and asked me to attend.
I was just wondering why they would only invite certain members of the board and what all was presented.
My understanding, and I talked to the woman who called me and said, "Did you see the invitation?" And she, and I asked her what their process was for issuing invitations, and she said that because they recognized their FOIA concerns, I believe they extended the invitation to maybe the chairman, vice chairman of the Madison County Board of Supervisors, and then to Ms. Donahue and me, and I thought it, frankly, even better, no offense, that you're out of town, so I received the invitation, but they didn't send it to everyone because they didn't want to create a FOIA concern. I was going to talk about it, actually, so whenever you're finished, I'd be happy to tell you what.
Well, that's my question, so whenever it's time.
Sure, I'll go ahead. So, Mr. Curry and I did attend a dinner hosted by Rappahannock Electric Cooperative, and both the CEO, Mr. Hua, and the fiber person were in attendance, along with their public relations folks and one of the REC board members. And it was a very informal 1-hour dinner and just casual conversation. I learned a couple of really interesting things about the winter storm that led to the very widespread outage in Rappahannock County back in, I think it was January 3rd. Yeah, that was a $22 million hit on REC's bottom line, and it really unprecedented, and they're still recovering from it. Mr. Hua had, numbers rolling off the top of his head. I want to say it was something like 700 or 800 broken poles. That was one of the statistics that stood out. Anyway, it was that was very eye-opening. And then we talked generally about REC's role in this regional broadband project. And I just asked some questions about, first of all, their fiber backbone in the county, and then how they expect to work with All Points Broadband going forward. And what I learned is that they sourced a certain type of fiber that's self-supporting, and you probably know this better than me since you're an electrical contractor, but REC's, the actual fiber that they sourced and have installed in Rappahannock County is a self-supporting type fiber that they selected for Rappahannock County because it's more robust than other alternatives. I said, because we were hard on your equipment. And he said, yeah, I mean, Mother Nature in Rappahannock County is hard on their equipment. So they sourced a pretty robust fiber product for their own substation to substation installations. And I thought that was good news. I asked about, really these are probably questions that will get more specific answers from the internet service provider, but I did ask how they expected All Points Broadband to work with REC and whether or not REC could confirm that the fiber broadband rollout would be done sort of in phases in parts of the county, as opposed to, one large countywide network that they wait to complete before flipping the switch. And they confirm that it's their understanding that they'll be doing small areas and then hooking people up sort of sequentially, as opposed to doing the whole county. So we talked just generally about how they would work with All Points Broadband once that project is underway. They said that All Points Broadband on the front end of their planning for the deployment of the fiber system in our county and other REC service areas will be based on All Points Broadband basically pre-clearing certain types of fittings and other equipment that will be project ready, which will minimize the need for REC to be extremely hands-on at every turn as All Points Broadband rolls out fiber into local hollows and down roads. In other words, REC will pre-clear a lot of the sort of the accessory auxiliary equipment that All Points will be using on the REC poles. Finally, they confirmed that the fiber that All Points Broadband will be deploying will be on the lower tier of the poles where other communications wires are placed, whereas REC's own fiber backbone, that fiber is in the upper tier where the high voltage power lines are running, because that's under REC control. So there will be, and they've made that decision so that the internet service provider will be able to access their own fiber without having to put themselves at risk by working in the REC high voltage area of the poles.
That means that the All Points will be lower yet.
Right.
The intent of the meeting, and I met at staff level with a couple other folks, this was their intention of taking their economic development team out and meeting the different communities. As it turns out, economic development is a little bit of a different animal here in Rappahannock County. We were mixed in with Madison County in the evening. So I think conversation turned at Mr. Wisson's table at dinner towards broadband a whole lot, for obvious reasons. But they expressed their desire to partner with the county and businesses on economic development. I let them know that we certainly, and I think Ms. Smith dropped in when I was meeting with staff during the day, but retention of who we have and making reliable power is very important for us from an economic development standpoint. But if they have big power users come to them looking for a place, Rappahannock's probably not the home for that company. It's important for REC to know that up front. We don't need a giant data center, probably.
No.
Nor do we want one.
Good call. Ms. Smith?
And just in terms of, to continue that conversation that, well, I like the word economic, redevelopment or economic revitalization. So it's not developing something new, it's just continuing to build on what's already here. And I think about that a lot in the article in the Rappahannock News about what's going on with farmers, with everything with gas prices and grain prices. I do wonder if we shouldn't seek more information about that, and if there are things that we should be doing as a board as a county to help our farmers, and we should be listening to them more actively. I don't know if this is a job for us or for the Planning Commission. And I don't know that it's really been done before or for a long time.
I think we've created an economic advisory council, but people that were on there had no background for such a thing. So it was all really a waste of exercise and futility. But I not to interject on what you're saying, I don't know what we would do as a board for the farmer. I mean, diesel fuel is $5.64, I think, when I pulled in there, but that was last fuel I bought for the tractor was $5.43, but that's off-road. But I don't know what we can do as a county, and I mean, we're already not charging personal property tax on tractors and farm implements, which got us into a mess down on 211.
Yeah.
Which I'm not going to talk about, but.
The board, how you handled the reassessment and maintained land use taxation and equalized tax rates, all of that
That's long-range philosophy. That's
reduces
not,
taxes on your those properties and land use, because that land use value is probably the same now as it was before, because it's set on the land, and so the tax rate lowered, so their tax burden is probably lower.
Right.
Right, well, yeah, but, I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I think that we have been doing things and that we are mindful. I just wonder if there's information out there that we haven't heard, or that we should do some active listening and see if there's other things we should be doing. And I don't know if there are. I don't know that there aren't. I always think of the opportunity that came up shortly after I joined the board, and it was a business development discussion at the inland port, and I think Gary attended, and Teresa attended from Businesses of Rappahannock, and John Lasinski attended as a representative of the board. And most counties have something in hand that they can give folks about our business identity in the county, and what we do, and what we want to do, and what would be a good fit and what wouldn't be a good fit for the county. And we don't have that. And I don't know that now's a great time to start the conversation, but I think it is something we should think about and maybe figure out a way to do.
Maybe at the risk of complicating our agenda, maybe an ongoing agenda item, that at least provides a catalyst for us to brainstorm and think how we can latch specific action items onto this. So it'd be like rural
visioning and economic revitalization, or something like that.
We do have tourist dollars that we'll have to figure out how to spend, and that could possibly, I mean, there is that, how many was it, 15,000 this past year?
Yeah.
20, and it will grow.
Yeah, and it'll grow, and maybe there's a dovetail there.
I just think it's something that we should think about. I don't know that action's immediately necessary, but it's something that if an opportunity arises or a threat arises to the county, I want us to be prepared either way.
To your point, I had a constituent call me and say that they had removed their land from land use because it was cheaper to pay the tax than to spread the fertilizer.
Wow.
Interesting.
If you can even find fertilizer.
And fertilizer right now is and it's only going to keep going up.
Yeah.
I've heard it from so many people. It's tough.
I was talking with a gentleman that he does quite a bit of farming right now, cutting hay mostly because of farmers in Falk here, but he cuts local. But anyway, the hay that he makes to sell, he had been selling it to a horse person for $40 a roll last year, and they wanted it for $40 a roll this year. And he said, well, is diesel fuel the same price as it was last year? No, he was telling me that he's probably going to get out of it. Just make the hay over in Falk year, and so these prices are driving people out.
Yeah.
I mean, it was always a joke amongst farmers around here and probably nationwide that, if you want to make $1 million in farming, you got to start with $2 million. And then one farmer here locally said that he was gonna keep farming until he couldn't afford it anymore, then he was gonna sell out. Well, that's not a business plan, but that's unfortunately where some of them are right now. Their farm equipment is worth more money this year than it was last year because the new stuff is so pricey.
Yeah.
Yep.
And nobody really wants a new tractor right now because of all the problems with trying to, run one of those engines with the particulate filters and stuff. So anything is 2018 or older is actually increased in value.
Maybe. Kier, did you have anything else?
I don't, no.
Ben?
I would just like to thank the Scrabble School Preservation Foundation and congratulate them on their 100th year anniversary and the sign that was erected. And I'd just like to thank them all for their vision and their steadfast work on what now is a beautiful restoration of that school, which is known throughout the South now as a remarkable example of a restored Rosenwald school. So I was honored to be there at that celebration. I also wanted to ask, and it's just maybe I'm forgetting, excuse me, but are we going to revisit the ordinance about tax relief for the elderly and the personal property?
Yes.
Because I've been hearing, okay.
The minutes you just approved directed Art and I to
Yeah,
work on that and bring it back to you.
Okay.
Yep.
Just wanted to make sure we stayed on top of that, because I've heard from a number of people that they.
Yeah.
Okay.
And of course,
Yeah.
we're targeted to work on it. Obviously, Ms. Graham will be the key player there.
Exactly.
Yep.
Okay.
Good. Thanks.
Excellent. All right, other than the fishing and getting fly fishing instruction from Roger Flincham, that was my highlight over the weekend.
Thanks for coming out.
That was a lot of fun, and I would love to help boost it next year.
Yeah.
Did you catch any fish?
Not from the grass. No,
Weren't
we were
you?
just practicing in the
okay.
grass, yes. I dumped a bunch of fish.
Not surprising.
Yeah. All right, need a recess until 7 p.m.
Great, thank you.
and we'll all be here. Thank you.
And it is 4:25.
Yep.
Maximum brightness, I didn't realize it.